There's a strange kind of loneliness that doesn't begin when people leave you. It begins while they're still standing right beside you. Nothing dramatic has happened. Nobody has insulted you. Nobody has started an argument. Yet the conversations feel thinner than they used to. The jokes don't land the same way. When you share an idea you're excited about, the room goes quiet for a second too long before someone changes the subject. You start wondering if you're imagining it. Maybe you're overthinking. Maybe you're becoming too sensitive. But sometimes the distance isn't in your head at all. Sometimes you've changed in a way that other people can feel long before they can explain it. Most people assume that relationships break because someone made a mistake, someone lied, betrayed trust, became selfish, or stopped caring. Those things certainly happen. But there is another reason relationships quietly begin to fracture, one that has nothing to do with cruelty and everything to do with identity. The uncomfortable truth is that every relationship silently depends on an unwritten agreement. Not about what you'll say, about who you'll continue to be. When that agreement changes, the relationship often changes with it. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying the hidden forces that shape human behavior. One of his observations cuts deeper than most people realize. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Most people hear that as advice about becoming less judgmental. It's much more than that. It explains why your growth can become another person's discomfort. Imagine two friends who have spent years complaining about their jobs. Every weekend they promise each other they'll finally start that business, learn that skill, apply for better opportunities. They talk passionately, they dream loudly. But Monday arrives, and nothing changes. Then one of them quietly starts. No announcements, no motivational speeches, no constant updates on social media. He simply begins waking earlier, learning after work, saving money instead of spending it, slowly building a different future. Something unexpected happens. The conversations become awkward. The friend who stayed the same starts making jokes. You've become boring. You think you're some entrepreneur now. You've changed. On the surface, those words sound harmless. Underneath them sits something far more complicated. The second friend isn't only reacting to the new behavior, he's reacting to the uncomfortable reminder that change was always possible. This is one of the hardest truths about human psychology. People rarely compare themselves to strangers. They compare themselves to people who started beside them. A billionaire doesn't usually make you question your choices because his life feels too distant from your own. But the friend who shared your excuses for years and suddenly stopped using them, that person forces a comparison that's impossible to ignore. And comparisons rarely stay rational. The mind protects itself. It starts inventing explanations. He got lucky. He's obsessed. He only has time because he doesn't have real responsibilities. Notice what these explanations accomplish. They remove responsibility. If his success came from luck, then you don't have to ask why you never tried. If he's obsessed, then your comfort becomes wisdom instead of avoidance. If his situation is completely different, then your own choices never have to be questioned. The story changes because reality feels too expensive to accept. The Stoics understood something surprisingly similar nearly 2,000 years before modern psychology gave it new language. Epictetus observed that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they make about those events. That insight reaches much further than personal anxiety. It explains social tension. Two people can witness exactly the same change. One becomes inspired, the other becomes resentful. The event is identical, the judgment is completely different. That's why growth doesn't automatically attract admiration. It reveals character. Some people look at discipline and think, if they can do it, maybe I can too. Others see the same discipline and immediately begin searching for reasons it doesn't count. The difference has very little to do with the disciplined person. It has everything to do with the observer. You begin noticing this pattern everywhere once you know how to look for it. Have you ever apologized less than you used to? Not because you've become rude, because you've stopped apologizing for existing. You no longer say sorry before asking a question. You don't apologize for needing time to think. You don't apologize for saying no. At first, this feels liberating. Then something unexpected happens. Certain people become strangely irritated. Not because your boundaries hurt them, because your boundaries removed something they had quietly become accustomed to receiving: access. For years, they assumed you would always be available, always flexible, always willing to rearrange your life around theirs. You never agreed to that arrangement out loud. It simply became normal. The moment you change the pattern, they experience the absence more strongly than they ever appreciated the presence. This happens because human beings adapt incredibly quickly to comfort. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. What once felt like a privilege soon becomes an expectation. Eventually, it feels like a right. When that right disappears, people experience loss instead of gratitude. That's why someone can call you selfish the first time you protect your own time, not because your boundary is unreasonable, because it interrupted a habit that benefited them. Marcus Aurelius warned himself about this kind of emotional confusion. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." People often interpret that as advice for overcoming obstacles, but it also applies to relationships. Resistance teaches you things approval never could. The moment someone becomes uncomfortable with your healthier behavior, you've learned something valuable about the relationship. Not necessarily that they're a bad person, only that the connection depended on a version of you that no longer exists. Many people respond to this discovery by shrinking. They become agreeable again. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They say yes when every part of them wants to say no. They hide ambitions that might make others uncomfortable. For a while, it seems to work. The tension disappears. People become warmer again. Everything feels normal, but there's a hidden cost. Every time you betray yourself to preserve acceptance, you teach yourself that belonging must be purchased. Eventually, you stop asking, "Who am I becoming?" Instead, you ask, "Who do I need to pretend to be today?" That's a dangerous trade, because pretending is exhausting. Not physically, psychologically. Imagine acting in a play every single day without ever leaving the stage. Every sentence is calculated, every opinion carefully edited, every decision filtered through one question: what will everyone think? Most people don't realize how much energy this consumes until they finally stop doing it. There's a remarkable peace that arrives when your words and your inner convictions begin matching each other. It doesn't make life easier, it makes life simpler. Those aren't the same thing. Simple doesn't mean painless. Simple means you stop carrying unnecessary contradictions. You stop maintaining 10 different versions of yourself for 10 different audiences. You stop remembering which mask belongs in which room. And strangely enough, that's when people begin responding to you differently. Not because you've become louder, quite the opposite. You become quieter, calmer, less interested in convincing everyone. There's a confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. Ironically, this often unsettles people far more than arrogance ever could. Arrogance invites competition. Quiet certainty offers nothing to compete against. It simply exists, and many people don't know what to do with someone who no longer needs constant validation. That kind of person becomes difficult to manipulate. Guilt stops working. Flattery loses its power. Social pressure begins falling flat. Not because they're emotionally cold, because they've learned to pause before reacting. That pause changes everything. It creates a space where automatic patterns used to live, and inside that space, real freedom begins. One of the biggest myths about confidence is that it changes how you see yourself. It does, but that's only half the story. Real confidence also changes how other people see you, and not always in the way you'd expect. Most people imagine confidence as something magnetic. They picture admiration, respect, influence. Sometimes that happens, but there's another side that almost nobody talks about. Confidence removes signals. It removes the little signs people unconsciously rely on to know where they stand with you. Think about how many social interactions run on tiny negotiations. You hesitate before speaking, so someone interrupts. You laugh at a dismissive joke, so they make another. You explain yourself for 5 minutes after making a simple decision, hoping everyone understands your reasons. These moments seem insignificant on their own. Together, they create a pattern. They teach people how much they can influence your behavior. Now imagine those signals disappearing. You answer calmly. You don't rush. You don't defend every choice. Someone questions your decision, and instead of scrambling to justify yourself, you simply say, "I understand, that's how you see it." Then you leave it there. No argument, no performance, no desperate attempt to win approval. For someone used to steering conversations through pressure, that silence feels strangely powerful. Not because you're dominating them, because you're no longer participating in the old game. This is why emotional maturity often gets mistaken for emotional distance. People who benefited from your reactivity may genuinely believe you've become colder. From their perspective, something valuable disappeared. But what disappeared wasn't your kindness. It was your predictability. And predictable people are much easier to control. Machiavelli made an observation that still echoes through every workplace, every family, and every circle of friends. He wrote, "Men more quickly forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." It sounds harsh, but underneath it is a simple psychological truth. People react strongly when something they have come to expect is taken away. That expectation doesn't have to be money. It can be your attention, your availability, your emotional labor, your constant reassurance. When those things quietly disappear, some people experience it as though something has been stolen from them, even if it was never theirs to begin with. This is why healthy change often creates unhealthy accusations. You've become difficult. You don't care like you used to. You think too much now. Sometimes those words contain genuine concern. Sometimes they don't. Wisdom lies in learning the difference. Ask yourself one question. If I return to my old habits tomorrow, would this problem disappear? If the answer is yes, the issue may never have been your personality. It may have been your boundaries. There's another pattern that's even harder to notice because it hides behind compliments. People often praise the version of you that was easiest for them. "I liked the old you. You used to be so easygoing. You never used to say no." At first, these sound affectionate, but look closer. Notice what they're actually celebrating. Not necessarily your happiness, your accessibility. Sometimes the version people miss most is the version that sacrificed the most. The version who ignored exhaustion, who tolerated disrespect, who accepted less than they deserved just to keep everyone comfortable. Nostalgia has a strange habit of editing out the cost. It remembers the peace. It forgets the price. Seneca warned about another form of this trap. He wrote, "He who is brave is free." Most people think bravery means facing danger. Often, it means facing disappointment. The disappointment of people who preferred the old version of you. The disappointment of realizing not every relationship was built on mutual respect. The disappointment of watching certain connections fade when you stop overextending yourself. That requires courage too, because every meaningful change carries a social cost. Not everyone can walk with you forever, and that's painful. There's no point pretending otherwise. Even the Stoics never argued that growth eliminates grief. They argued that grief becomes easier to bear when it serves something worthwhile. Losing an illusion hurts, but living inside one hurts longer. Here's something else you'll begin noticing. People reveal themselves most clearly when your life improves, not because success changes them, because success removes excuses. When you're struggling, everyone feels comfortable offering advice. When you begin succeeding, advice often turns into comparison. Some people celebrate, others compete, others quietly disappear. This isn't because achievement automatically creates enemies. Achievement creates clarity. It reveals which relationships were rooted in genuine goodwill and which were quietly dependent on you remaining at the same level. Nietzsche captured this uncomfortable reality in one sentence: "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die." Change isn't optional. It's the condition for remaining alive psychologically. But every new skin leaves the old one behind, and not everyone who knew the old version of you will recognize the new one. That's why trying to satisfy everyone eventually becomes impossible. Every improvement solves one problem while creating another. Become more ambitious. Someone calls you obsessed. Become more peaceful. Someone calls you passive. Become more assertive. Someone calls you arrogant. Become more private. Someone says you've become secretive. If your identity depends entirely on avoiding criticism, you'll eventually stop moving altogether. You'll spend your life adjusting yourself to opinions that constantly change. The Stoics offered a different path. Instead of asking whether everyone approves, ask whether your actions agree with your principles. That's a much steadier compass. Because public opinion moves like the wind, character moves much more slowly. There's a quiet freedom in realizing you don't need universal approval to live an honorable life. You only need enough honesty to face yourself when the room becomes silent. And that brings us to the most difficult lesson of all. Sometimes the people resisting your growth aren't strangers. They're people you genuinely love. Family, friends, people who stood beside you during difficult seasons. This is where simple advice falls apart. It's easy to walk away from toxic people. It's much harder when the relationship contains real affection alongside real friction. You don't want to abandon them. You don't want to judge them. You certainly don't want to become self-righteous. So what do? First, stop assuming every disagreement is proof that someone secretly hates your progress. Sometimes they're simply afraid that you'll outgrow them, afraid they'll lose their place in your life, afraid that the distance already beginning to form can't be closed. Fear often disguises itself as criticism, not because people are calculating, because fear rarely introduces itself honestly. It speaks through sarcasm, through small dismissive comments, through minimizing your achievements, through constant reminders of who you used to be. Understanding this doesn't mean accepting unhealthy behavior. It means seeing it clearly. Compassion and boundaries are not opposites. In fact, the healthiest boundaries usually require compassion. Because once you understand that many difficult behaviors come from insecurity rather than malice, you stop taking everything personally. You also stop trying to fix what only another person can choose to face. That may be the hardest lesson in the entire journey. You cannot do someone else's inner work. No amount of patience can replace their willingness. No amount of love can substitute for self-honesty. Every person eventually reaches a point where they must decide whether to keep protecting an old identity or become someone new. The difficult part is that the second choice rarely feels like victory. It feels like loss. You lose familiar routines. You lose conversations that once came easily. Sometimes you lose people you never imagined your life without. For a while, it can seem as though becoming more authentic has only made your world smaller. And in one sense, it has. But smaller is not always worse. A forest becomes healthier when dead branches fall away. The tree isn't being punished, it's making room for new growth. Human relationships often follow the same pattern. Not every connection is meant to survive every season of your life. Some people are companions for a chapter, others become companions for a lifetime. Wisdom is learning the difference without becoming bitter. Bitterness is one of the greatest dangers on this path. After enough disappointments, it's tempting to conclude that everyone is jealous, everyone is manipulative, everyone secretly wants to keep you small. That conclusion feels protective. It's also false. The mind loves simple stories because they remove uncertainty. But human beings are rarely simple. The same person who misunderstands you today may understand you 5 years from now. Someone who resists your boundaries may eventually develop healthier ones of their own. Growth has a way of spreading quietly. Sometimes the example you set today doesn't make sense to another person until much later. This is why patience matters. Not the patience that tolerates disrespect forever. The patience that allows people the dignity of changing at their own pace. Carl Jung believed that genuine transformation cannot be forced from the outside. It has to emerge from within. That's why arguing people into self-awareness almost never works. The harder you push, the harder they defend the identity they're trying to protect. Have you ever noticed how little truly wise people argue? It's not because they lack conviction. It's because they've learned something most of us discover the hard way. Insight offered before someone is ready often becomes another thing they resist. So instead of trying to convince everyone, they focus on living differently. Their actions become the conversation. And actions have remarkable patience. Words demand immediate agreement. A life well lived does not. Over time, people begin noticing things they once ignored. They notice that you're calmer during conflict, that you no longer chase every argument, that criticism doesn't throw you into panic. That praise doesn't intoxicate you either. You're becoming harder to control because you're becoming easier to understand. Not easier for others to understand, easier for yourself. There's a profound difference. Most people spend years trying to explain themselves to everyone else while remaining strangers to their own motives. They know why they're busy. They don't know why they can't rest. They know what they're chasing. They don't know what they're running from. Self-knowledge changes that. It doesn't answer every question, but it begins replacing unconscious reactions with conscious choices, and that changes everything. Viktor Frankl, reflecting on humanity under the harshest imaginable conditions, wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space is where real sovereignty begins. Not sovereignty over other people, over yourself. Anyone can feel calm when life cooperates. The real test comes when you're misunderstood, when someone assumes the worst about your intentions, when you're excluded without explanation, when kindness isn't returned, when your progress is met with silence instead of celebration. Those moments reveal whether your peace belongs to you or whether it still depends on other people's approval. The Stoics never promised a world that would reward virtue immediately. In many cases, they expected the opposite. They believed that integrity has value even when recognition never arrives. Because the first person transformed by an honest life is always the one living it. Everything else is secondary. As the years pass, something subtle begins happening. You stop measuring relationships by their length. You begin measuring them by their depth. A friendship that allows honesty becomes more valuable than 10 built on performance. A conversation where both people can admit weakness becomes richer than endless exchanges of carefully managed impressions. You become less interested in being surrounded by people and more interested in being known by the right ones. Ironically, this often leads to stronger relationships than you had before, not because everyone suddenly agrees with you, because the people who remain no longer need a performance from you. They aren't attached to the role you used to play. They're connected to the person you've become. Those relationships feel different. There's less pretending, less guessing, less walking on eggshells. You can disagree without fearing abandonment. You can admit mistakes without feeling diminished. You can celebrate each other's growth without quietly turning it into a competition. That's rare. And rarity gives it value. This is why becoming psychologically mature isn't really about escaping difficult people. It's about becoming the kind of person who no longer builds a life around fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, fear of standing apart, fear of being misunderstood. Those fears may never disappear completely. You're human. They'll visit from time to time. The difference is that they no longer make your decisions, and perhaps that's the clearest sign of genuine freedom. Not that everyone accepts you, not that every relationship survives, not that criticism vanishes, but that your direction no longer changes every time someone disapproves. The ancient Stoics often compared life to the work of an archer. The archer controls preparation, aim, discipline, and effort. The wind is never fully under his command. Neither is the final landing of every arrow. Your character works the same way. You can choose honesty, you can choose courage, you can choose discipline, you can choose compassion. You cannot choose how every person interprets those choices. Some will be inspired, some will feel threatened, some will misunderstand you completely. None of those reactions can define the value of the path you're walking, because the purpose of becoming wiser was never to make everyone comfortable. It was to become someone who could meet the world without constantly abandoning himself. That's the quiet reward waiting at the end of this journey. Not a perfect life, not universal admiration, something much rarer, the ability to look in the mirror without needing to invent a different person looking back. And once you have that, you stop chasing acceptance at any cost. You stop shrinking so other people can remain comfortable. You stop confusing peace with pleasing everyone around you. You realize that authenticity is not a performance, nor is it a weapon. It's a practice, a daily decision to let your actions reflect your values more than your fears. Some people will understand that immediately. Others may never understand it at all. Either way, your task remains the same. To keep doing the quiet work of becoming a person whose inner life and outer life no longer stand in opposition. Because the greatest victory isn't getting the world to see you clearly. It's finally seeing yourself clearly enough that the world's confusion no longer persuades you to become someone else.